Hi guys, T here, back for another episode of the Mailbag. Now I want to start today's list of questions that you've been sending me with a special thank you for all my subscribers, because in the past month or so my channel has been growing super fast, and don't think I haven't noticed, because I wrote it down. What does it say? I started this channel in like February of 2008, and then, you know, we hit our first 1,000 subscribers in September of 2013, and then we hit 2,000 just last April, and we've already hit 2,200 in May. So in the past like 4 weeks I've gained like 10% of what took me 6 years to get in the first place. So we're growing much faster than we used to. It's really cool. So I just wanted to kind of stop for a second and say thank you. So, you know, I know I'm still a small-time YouTuber, and, you know, woo, 2,200 subs. Well, it's 2,200 subs more than I had when I started, so I am very grateful and I'm very happy. So, you know, thank you very much for watching me, for listening to my nerdy bullshit for as long as you have, and for everybody that's just joined us in the past month or so, you know, welcome to the show. Welcome to the craziness that goes on. Anyway, I've got some new questions from people, and it's been about a month since the past, like, mailbag episode, so, and I figured since we were growing so quickly, we could do, like, one of these a month, if I get, like, enough questions to do them, so, here we go. From several people, will you review the Book of Exalted Deeds since you reviewed the Book of Vile Darkness? Yeah. As soon as I can get my hands on a copy. If you'll notice, I have a shelf full of Pathfinder stuff, and, you know, and one D&D book. Well, now it's 2 D&D books, because I have the Book of Vile Darkness, but, you know, I need money to buy more nerdy D&D stuff, and right now I'm unemployed, so it's, you know, I get a check from YouTube every 2 months, and it's not enough to live on, so I can't go spending my money willy-nilly on nerdy stuff right now. So I do have a PDF of the Book of Exalted Deeds, so I might do it that way, if you guys don't mind, because usually I like to have it in my hands and like show it to the camera and all that good stuff, but I have a PDF, so I could probably do a similar style review that I did to the Book of Vile Darkness. I would just have to use the PDF files and like copy and paste stuff into Paint like I was doing. Things like that. So not a lot of FaceTime on my part, but it would be a short, like 10-15 minute review like the Book of Vile Darkness was. So will I review the Book of Exalted Deeds? Yeah. I mean, enough people have been asking about it, so sure, why not? Also from several people, will you review the Book of Erotic Fantasy? Yes. Eventually. You know, I'm not saving it for like the 100th episode or anything, but its day will come, I promise. That's what she said. Its day will come. Ah, no. No, not funny? Okay. From GameLords55. I've watched all of your videos and I'm a big fan and a DM, and I have some questions. What books should I get? I've played D&D for 3 years. How... Oh, there's several questions here. Okay, what books should you get? Well, you really don't have to get any of the books as long as you know how the game works and you can teach it to somebody else. I mean, I would recommend getting the core books if you're playing D&D, so that's the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and at least one of the monster manuals, and that's pretty much enough to run any kind of campaign. And if you want more stuff, then you just have to work from there with whatever kind of books you need, whether it be more monster manuals or one of the splat books or Sword and Fist, or, you know, whatever you need to cater with, you can do that. How do I make a quest on the fly? And what should my next quest be about? I assume you mean like your campaign stuff, and the short answer from me is don't make a quest on the fly. It makes you look really unprofessional, and it makes, if and most of the times your players can tell if you're flying by the seat of your pants, and it's a great way to lose respect at the table. So, so how do you make quests on the fly? Don't. I mean, you can do side things or you can adjust things as you go, but usually by the time I've sat down at a table to run a game, I've got everything worked out. So, they're gonna surprise you and you'll have to do some stuff on the fly, but try not to. Adaptation helps add spice to it if they do something unexpected, but don't try to fly by the seat of your pants. It makes you look like an amateur. What should your next quest be about? Whatever your players want it to be. Find out what they want and then give it to them. I like dungeons with lots of monsters and puzzles, but my players like on sea and in towns, woods, kingdoms. Okay. My last question is, I have 2 quests going with my players. What should I do? Should I stop one and keep going on the other quest? Or keep going with 2 of them? Well, if they're in separate places, then really you have to keep going with both of them, in my opinion. One is in the sea, but the other is in a dungeon. If you need their plots, tell me. No, not really. Splitting, I'm assuming that they both started different games, or like they started playing separately, and maybe you want to bring them together, which is a great thing to do. It's usually much harder to do than normal, and it takes way more work. But if you're running 2 campaigns at the same time, just keep going with both. From Doug E. Maybe you can do a review of one of the BioWare D&D games, like Planescape Torment or Baldur's Gate. I could try. The only problem, Doug, with doing reviews of RPGs is that RPGs tend to be 40, 50, 60 hours long. And it can take, with real life and trying to find a job and all that other, doing D&D stories and all that other stuff, finding the amount of time that it takes to not only play a fully fledged RPG, but to make a review of one, much less a video game. Make a review of one that looks even halfway respectable can take months. So even if I said yes, it would be way down the line. So I'm playing Divine Divinity right now, which I plan on doing a review for, but I'm 10 levels down in the first dungeon, and there's so many glitches and bullshit things that go on in that game. It's probably going to take me a while. But I keep having people tell me about Baldur's Gate, that I should play it, so I'll probably do that someday, but not anytime soon. From Jack Sweet. Would you ever consider going into detail about what's acceptable at the table? I don't think it's something you've talked about much. I assume you mean etiquette, while you're playing the game. Yeah, I could do an episode on that. There's not a whole ton to do without coming across like a jerk, but yeah, I can do an episode on that. From Zachary Cordier. Hey T, could you do an episode on how to keep order at the table? Yeah, I could probably lump that in with my table etiquette episode, so yeah, sure. From Alfredo Martinez. If you can, I'd like to see a similar episode to the Book of Vile Darkness on the Stronghold Builder's Guidebook. If I can find it, yeah, it came out over a decade ago, so, if I could find a copy of it somewhere without... Maybe if I can find a PDF of it or something, I can do a similar review, but it's a really interesting book. It is. It's mostly a shopping list book, to be honest, so it would be a very short review. It's mostly pages and pages and pages of stuff you can buy and put in your castle, or traps, or ballistas, or, thickness of walls equals this much gold per square foot, and stuff like that. It's not a very large book, but I have mentioned it many times. So yeah, I should probably do a review on it sometime, however short it might be. From Senior Latke, Latke, Latke. Have you ever tried Descent, the board game? No, but it looks freaking awesome. I wish I could try it. From the Useless Knight. Oh, don't make a name where you talk down to yourself. Can you recommend any online tools to play D&D? I have a bunch of players who are eager to play, but, like me, never played D&D before. I know you aren't a big fan of online tools for D&D, but are there any good ones that you know about? The one that I use, to be honest, like to keep myself from having a stack of books at the table, is I have a laptop next to me and I use d20srd.com. So, you know, d20srd.com, and it's got pretty much everything D&D anywhere ever on it. And avoid the fan created pages because they don't know the meaning of balance, but if you can find stuff that's got, like, you know, this was pulled from this book. It's basically Wikipedia for D&D, where it tells you everything about everything: monsters, armor, shopping, classes, you know, campaign settings, everything. So that's probably one of the best D&D. I'm sure there is a Dungeons and Dragons Wikipedia out there, but D&D or D20 SRD is like a bare bones, this is the information and that's it kind of thing. So I like it a lot more. From Sekthe. Hey T, I was wondering, what's your advice about players cheating? The best way to keep players from cheating is to call them out as soon as you see it. And it's gonna start drama at the table, but that's the best you can do. Like I had two guys doing like a wizard duel a long time ago, and one of them tried to like pull a fast one by making one of the D6s disappear off the table like we weren't gonna notice or something. And I basically called him out in front of the whole table, and you know, he lost honor in the eyes of the group for quite some time because of that. So though it is blunt and abrasive on your part, especially if you're the DM, call them out as soon as you possibly can. You're like, dude, I saw you take the dice. Put it back. Or, you know, just you know, peer pressure is a powerful thing. Shame is a powerful thing. Call them out right in front of the group. That's the best thing you can do to make it stop immediately. And one time is usually all it takes to like scare them straight, you know? So as soon as you see him do it, if you see him do it, make sure you've got like evidence right in front of you, like, dude, I saw you do that, or dude, you know, put the dice back, or whatever. Just call him out right then. You know, everybody will look. He'll feel at least some form of embarrassment and will probably stop. And if not, then, you know, you got to take steps from there. But, you know, embarrassment is usually the best way to deal with cheating players. From Carlos Buchanan. What goes on in hell and in the abyssal realm? Is there a lineup of people being talked to by a gentle-faced suit and tie wearing devil at the desk offering people longer periods and less severe levels? Does Irinthanol just randomly pick off one of them, popping off a hand and slapping it together, letting that speak for them while he mix and matches? Good Lord, Carlos, your grammar. Did you even read this before you hit enter? What goes on in hell? I have no idea. It's not in the Book of Vile Darkness, which is ironic when you think about it, because where else would you have maps of hell? Well, I guess the planar handbook, but I don't have that in front of me. So there are maps of hell for D&D and all the levels therein, but what goes on there? I like to assume that hell tends to be more orderly and the abyss tends to be more like a wild, not really jungle, but jungle as close as I can come. Because devils tend to be more aristocratic and like orderly than just plain old demons 90% of the time. And there are exceptions, but just like on average. I think of the Abyss as the wild jungle, and Hell kind of like Gotham City if it was full of demons. You know, it's just dark and drab and stuff, but it has order to it, in a sense. So, no idea how to answer that question. Let's see. Over 18 Iris says, "Hey there, T. I've got a few questions I don't really think you've addressed on D&D stories too much. Here's the backdrop. I recently started playing my first D&D campaign, 3.5, and we only had 3 players with 1 DM. We have a cleric, a wizard, and a fighter." Oh, that's a good trio. All starting at level 1. Recently, at our third session, the cleric couldn't make it to the game. We had been in a small farming town investigating a local dwarven tomb. Well, us other 2 players decided to go ahead and play without her. She said that was cool with her. Good. It's a good idea to check with them first. So we spent several days in-game getting through this dungeon. We would go work it, come back to town when we got too hurt and get healed by the town cleric and by her character, since she was just laying in bed or something every time we got back to town. In Canaan, you might just say she came down with a cold or something. We uncovered every dungeon room, trap, and treasure without her. Even got horses and some plot clues out of the townsfolk. I'm assuming that even though our DM previously had an everybody gets the same XP when you're all together rule, she might now be lagging behind us a bit. So when the game begins again, we're ready to leave town and do a bunch of stuff that she has no idea about. We have to, God, this message is long. Okay. We also have horses, but we have to wait for her to pay for her stay in town, possibly buy a horse also, and get caught up in all the story. Alright, here's where my questions come in. What are your thoughts on carrying on a game without one of the storyline characters? Are you comfortable having their character do predictable things without them being there to approve? We rolled dice to see if she was in a mood to heal us when we got back to town following a long, hard day at the dungeon. Clearly we could have left her in town, nicely as we did, too. Whereas if we had been deep in a large castle at the start of the session, it could have broken the story to have her just disappear. Yeah, I know what you mean. If one person doesn't show up, or if 2 people don't show up, do you keep playing or no? On average, just for myself, if half, like say you've got a group of 4, if half or more of your players don't show up, then no, you can't. But if one person can't make it, or if you've got a group of like 6 and 2 people don't make it, then I think it's perfectly fine to keep going. And you can NPC them if you want, if you've got their character sheet, and you can kind of guess how they would act. Or you can say, oh, well, they came down with a horrible case of the measles, or they have a fever of 101, so we left them in the tavern, but, you know, such and such dungeon can't wait. Or, you know, you have a cleric, so maybe she's performing clerical rites, or maybe there was a small contained plague in that village, and she had to stay there and, like, heal people en masse and couldn't follow you to the dungeon. Or just, like, depending on what class they are, there might be a group of people that begs for their attention. You know, like a barkeep is sure that some guys are going to come and bust him up and try to burn his bar down. So he says, you know, fighter from the, you know, adventuring group, fighter, will you stay here and fend them off, you know? Meanwhile, your party can go on and stuff like that. And you can just, you know, roll some dice and say, yeah, you took this much damage, but you fended them off and you get, you know, a little bit less XP. Obviously, since they didn't come to the game, you're right, they can't have the same amount of XP that everybody else did because they weren't there. You know, you can't get XP for an adventure if you weren't there. Or if you were if you say, hey, your character got sick for a few days, so, you know, you didn't get any XP because you were sick in bed for 3 days, you know, things like that. Make up a, if you have to leave them in town, make up a legitimate excuse like sickness or helping someone else, or, you know, a class-specific job like I said with the bar and the fighter, or the cleric. You know, there's a sudden sickness that's sweeping over the town. She's got to stay in town and make sure it doesn't spread anywhere else and heal the sick where they are. Make up something so they don't feel bad about it, you know. And it's like, say, oh, you weren't here last session, so we just left your stupid ass in town. You know, don't be mean. Just say, oh, you know, an altar boy from the Church of Pelor or whatever came and said, you know, all the monks are getting sick all at the same time, and we don't know why. We need you to come and you know, bless and heal and pass around the holy water and all that good stuff, because we know you're a cleric of Pelor, and just stuff like that. Make up like a paragraph of what they were doing while the rest of the party was on. And what was the other one? Whereas if we had been deep in a large castle at the start of the session, it could have broken the story to have her just disappear. Yeah, if you're right in the middle of a dungeon and somebody doesn't show up, then yeah, you kind of have to just like pick up their character sheet and put it behind the DM screen and say, okay, this is what happens. Or, and this doesn't happen very often, I've only seen it happen once, because D&D players are actually very distrustful of each other when it comes to character sheets. If you have someone else at the table who wouldn't mind playing 2 characters at the same time, you know, like if the person who's missing says, okay, you know, my fighter, you know, you can't just leave him behind, he's going to want his fair share of the treasure, or, you know, we were halfway through the dungeon and my fighter can't just poof out of existence, so, you know, I'm going to give my fighter character to the rogue, and so that player is going to play the rogue and the fighter that game. You know, and make sure all parties are consenting. So, you know, the rogue doesn't mind playing 2 characters, and the fighter doesn't mind that the rogue is going to have control over his character. Stuff like that. So, it's ideal for you as a DM if you're not the one who's controlling them, because you know where all the traps are, you know where all the everything is, and you would probably unconsciously play it more, play it safer, with the knowledge that you have. So, and we've already talked about the sheep on the leash. You know, they'll have him go first because you, the DM, know where everything is. See if you can get one of your other players to play that character, and if not, then you do it. As far as being caught in the middle of a dungeon. Alternatively, what are your feelings on introducing new players to a campaign? Whether 2 sessions in or 10 sessions into a campaign that's supposed to last 15 or 20. If a player had to drop out, would you seek a replacement, or how much would it push you towards maybe canceling the whole campaign? One person, and I know this is kind of rude to say it when you're thinking about your friends, but one person does not make or break a campaign. If you can come up with a replacement, do it. Don't try to pass their character sheet to this new person, because that's not fair. That's not their character, and it's not fair to them in terms of like doing the whole D&D thing, making their own character, going through all the books and the shopping and fun stuff like that. Be fair to them, and if you know that other person is never going to be back, you could use that person like as an NPC for a session or 2, and then just like spectacularly kill them off in just like the biggest spray of blood, or, you know, maybe their childhood sweetheart just pops in out of the woodwork and proclaims their love, and they go off to get married, or, you know, maybe that person was leading a double life and they're actually a spy or a doppelganger. You know, you could put in a whole subplot that person actually got replaced with a doppelganger, and that's going to be one of the side quests now, is finding out where your actual fighter went, because your fighter turned out to be a doppelganger of your original fighter. You know, just Or if you just want to say, hey, you guys got into a huge argument and he stomped off, or she decided didn't want to hang out with you jackasses because she wasn't getting what she thought was her fair share of the treasure. Just, again, make up like a paragraph and then see them out. You know, you don't have to actually kill them off, but like party dynamics, friends, relatives, you could say, hey, your father died, or your father is dying, you need to head back home and see to his estate. You know, or you could just make up anything to make it like a graceful kind of leave out. Because you don't want, not like in character but out of character, you don't want to paint them as a bad guy because they can't sit and play a game with you for 5 or 6 hours once a week or twice a month or whatever. They would be there if they could be, and there's not a D&D gamer alive who wouldn't like trade out their schedule to be able to play once a week or twice a week or whatever. But you know, people are very busy. They're sorry deep in their hearts, so don't like insult them with like, oh, you guys, you know, so and so's. Yeah, I can kind of like erase. I'm trying to backpedal, erase about half of what I just said. You know, don't villainize them out of character or in character about leaving, because that's just not cool for them. As far as introducing a new person, I mean, assuming that one person left, well, you've designed the whole campaign for that many people, why not bring in a new person? Or if you think, you know, you've had a party of 4 all this time and you suddenly got this other person that wants to play, yeah, bring them straight in. You know, you would obviously be like, well, you guys are feeling kind of challenged with all the enemies you've been facing lately. You decide the party needs to be a little bigger, so you go looking around and you have a few interviews and stuff like that, and then you end up with this guy after, you know, 1d4 days of doing interviews and asking around for experienced adventurers and stuff like that, and then you can just shoehorn them straight in. It is kind of hard to bring in a new person halfway through the story, because they're not going to have as much impact, and there's really not much you can do about that. So don't feel bad, but, you know, again, come up with like a paragraph or roll a few dice to see how they do it, or where they get this person from, or that, you know, hey, you decide you need more help, or you decide 4 adventurers, you know, isn't enough damage in a battle, so you need 5, or you know, you lost 1 guy, so you're going to replace him with another guy, stuff like that. Again, don't villainize them as the new guy. Just say, hey, out of all the folks that decided they wanted to come with you, this guy was the best, so here he is. You know, that kind of thing. Start them out on a happy note. But yeah, one person leaving should never cancel a whole campaign. Again, one person does not make or break a campaign. And if you lose one person and you can't replace them, like with another person, then that would be one of the rare times where you have like the DM's NPC come in. And that is kind of in poor taste, but if you've got 3 people that are still perfectly willing to play and you just don't have a 4th person, you could have either the Dungeon Master's NPC come in, or you can retool the campaign so that it's more fair for 3 people, which is a lot of work for you, but there's still 3 people relying on you for having a fun game, so do it as gracefully as you can, whichever way you decide to go with it. This might also involve another issue. It's still the same guy, by the way. This was a long message. This might also involve another issue, the difference between a home run campaign and a public anyone can join such thing like the Encounters program. He's talking about D&D Encounters. Basically, you go to a game shop and you play games that D&D has sent to that game shop, and you can show up one week and then not show up for 3 sessions and then come back and in and out and stuff like that. It does make for some instability. I myself have joined a couple of games with pre-made characters in the middle of campaigns a few times, even skipping a week just to show up again with the same character in the story. So in that area, players popping up or disappearing is no big issue, because it's about playing maybe more than storytelling. Story worlds can be bent or broken to bring in new players. In those comic shop games, because I think the devotion is more towards the joy people have of playing it together than it is to the wonder of the story. Yeah, that's true. I'm fairly new, as I've said, but I feel like home campaigns try to keep a stronger story that makes good sense. Well, you're right. That and modern day D&D modules are way too damn easy. And they actually have notes in them that if players are struggling, subtract HP from the orcs, or, they're not well made like they used to be. Thank you for your time in reading this, and I apologize if I have failed to make any sense. Happy gaming. Well, over 18 Irish, that was a lot to take in, but I certainly understand. Losing somebody, replacing somebody, and valuing story over gameplay is not something that's as rare as you might think. I mean, we're RPG players. Role-playing is 2/3 of what it says. From Yosarian the Lucid, could you please do a D&D story about undead? Yeah, sure. Especially how you would play DM, necromancers, liches, ghouls, vampires, etc. And maybe look at it from the DM's perspective, not just the player. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on such an interesting brand of foe. Shout out from Melbourne, Australia. I have people from Australia watching me? Holy crap. Awesome. But yeah, I can do it. I can do an episode on undead. Liches, necromancers, ghouls, and vampires are all very different topics, but it'll probably make for a good long episode. So yeah, definitely. I tend to go towards more the Anne Rice vampire, back when vampires were vampires. Looking at you, Twilight, and all these other romance novels. But yeah, definitely. I'll sit and do some research and then do an undead episode sometime soon. The last one is from 11 Matthew Brown. Hey T, me and my friends have just recently discovered D&D. Welcome to the fold. And I have become the designated DM. Congratulations. We usually just do small one-shot adventures, but I did one a while ago based off of Dragon Age, and everyone seemed to love it and wanted me to continue that storyline. My problem here is that I did not put a ton of detail into it before we played it, thinking that it would just be a one-time thing, and now it is something that we play weekly. Oh, that's good. Not a lot of groups get to play weekly. There are so many details that I have left out, and things that I believe I should add, such as details or layout of a city, important figures, or histories of the land. I'm afraid it may be too quick, maybe too late to go back and add these things in, but now that I have played the games again and actually did my research, the inconsistencies have started to bother me. Do you have suggestions about how I could fix this without changing too much of what is already in place? Thanks for reading. Oh, well, Matthew, it's actually very easy. You see, when you play a tabletop game that is based on a setting that already exists, whether that be Dragon Age, Firefly, Alien, Call of Cthulhu, Song of Ice and Fire, stuff like that. If you play a game that is based off of a series of novels or a story or another game or anything like that, you have what's called a second layer, what did we call it? A second layer overworld. It goes in 2 layers, kind of like a split timeline. The bottom line is the Canaan story arc. Like if we were going to do something on Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire, given that you could get like 6 people together that have all read A Song of Ice and Fire, which is very unlikely from where I'm sitting, you would have obviously everything that everybody knows from all the books at the bottom, say, you know, this happened and then this happened, and, you know, this person died because of this, and this person betrayed this person, and, you know, this person stabbed that guy in the back, but this person was poisoned by that guy's brother, and, you know, so on and so forth. Everything that happened in the books is stuff that everybody knows, whether it happened or is going to happen. And then there's the secondary timeline. And this is where you're sitting with Dragon Age. Because I assume, being that you're playing a Dragon Age game, that you've played the Dragon Age computer games, right? And your friends have too. Otherwise, you know, it'd be kind of hard to pull people into a Dragon Age game if they haven't played the Dragon Age games. But I digress. They all know what happens in the Dragon Age video games, right? Right. So they like the setting and they want to play with that. Well, I actually have only played the beginning of the first one. I know, shame on me. What you're supposed to do is take what everybody knows and say, okay, the setting's the same, but the people are going to be different. Or the castles are all where they're supposed to be, the cities are where all they're supposed to be. You know, you're still running from this kind of bad guy, or this kind of, I forget what it was called in Dragon Age. It was like the taint or the something, where it would make like goblin people and they would come out of portals to come and eat your face and stuff like that. But the top layer is that everything in the world is exactly the way it's supposed to be in the video games, except for all the characters that are in it. So you don't know, you know, this person might not be a Cylon in this version of Firefly. Or, you know, this person might not be getting ready to stab that other guy in the back. Or maybe he already has stabbed that person in the back. Or maybe the person that got stabbed in the back is going to do the backstabbing this time around. You have to maintain the world that they like from Dragon Age, but take out the events. And this way you can say, you know everything you know from the games except for the story itself, because the people, you know, it would be like running a Drizzt game. For people that have read all the Drizzt books, be like, okay, you know, because there's that one asshole that's going to be like, oh, Drizzt doesn't know that spell, or Drizzt's pet is always that Black Panther thing, or Drizzt would never talk to somebody that way. Well, that's Kanan Drizzt. This is this tabletop game's Drizzt, where that history has not happened yet. Or that history hasn't happened at all. We're just using the setting. You know, you can have characters from the game who act similarly, you know, especially the women, because I've heard that game has amazing female characters. But say, you know, these are all kind of the same people, but they haven't actually taken any actions yet. So you don't know what they're going to do. Their personalities could be slightly different. They don't have any of the history that happened in the games, because we're using the setting. And if you want to keep things completely in canon, you know, the way things actually went all through the story, then you need to go play the game. You know, not necessarily, you know, it's like you wouldn't want to play Lord of the Rings unless you were playing during the War for the Ring, you know? So do you play as the main characters? And if so, why? You know exactly how that story goes. You need to play somebody over here, or, you know, somebody in the castle, or somebody X, Y, and Z, and you might run into those characters, but the problem becomes, if your campaign takes place during Dragon Age, during the course of the game, or like right after or right before, make sure your players know that Kanan is noted but not set in stone. And they'll go, well, why is that? And you have to basically point at them and say, you weren't there in the games, so the 4 of you, or the 5 of you, or whatever, are going to change the course of history, because, you know, we're basically adding 5 characters in, and people might act similarly that they do in the game, but they're going to act differently because you're there, you know? It's like changing one ingredient in a pie. It's still gonna be a pie, but it might be a lot sweeter, it might be a lot chunkier, it might be a lot crisper, because you changed something. the whole is still the same. You still got a pie, you know, whether for good or for ill as far as taste goes. But you know, you change one thing and you change the pie, you change the soup. So I hope that's coming across as well as I think it is. It's like as soon as you add players, especially multiple players, the canon of the story cannot go the same way as it was in the game because there are more factors acting independently now. So people will act differently. You know, stories will not go the way they're supposed to in the books. Like so-and-so that got backstabbed, well, if they think they know he's going to get backstabbed, they'll go and try to save him, or they'll try to speed up his demise. And you say, well, that hasn't happened yet, so you don't know about it. Or, you know, it's not going to happen at all because X, Y, and Z, things like that. The world will remain the same, but the events are going to completely unravel because of your players. So try and tell them that. There's canon at the bottom, and then on top is canon plus players. You know, so it's a different, same world, different storyline. I've probably been talking in circles, I'm sorry, but that's about the best kind of advice I can give you for running in a predetermined world like Lord of the Rings or Song of Ice and Fire or Dragon Age or whatever. If there's already a story that takes place in this world, your players are going to change it. Which is why most of the time I try to go for like prequels or like sequels or stuff like that. That's why I don't play Star Wars games. I'm never going to run into Darth Vader, and if we do run into Darth Vader, we're not going to kill him. At least not if the DM's doing it right. Stuff like that. I try to stick to semi-original settings, or settings that don't have any like canon storylines to them, you know? So that's about all we have for the mailbag this time around, so I hope you guys had fun, and I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming.